ready?
Almost.
We're good.
Good. All right, good afternoon. Thanks for attending this press conference. My name is Sheriff Kyle Kirkmeyer. I'm Morton County Sheriff. As you know, yesterday I received a call from the U.S. Attorney General, and I was able to again state my concerns regarding the public and law enforcement safety. I reiterated the need for the federal government to make a decision one way or the other on the easement to assist in law enforcement efforts. While she concurred for the safety of everybody involved, just as I have been talking about from the very beginning of this, there was not much offered in terms of direct action from the federal government, and the action that has been requested repeatedly to try to bring this to a peaceful resolution. I do hope that the dialogue continues, but some real efforts need to be made on the part of the federal government in light of the unlawful and sometimes very violent actions on the side of the protesters. As I've said repeatedly, this issue is not going to get solved out on the roadway or on the prairie with law enforcement and protesters standing and looking at each other. We are in day 115 of this conflict and protest activity and action, and we need the requested action from the Obama administration. I also hope that the Attorney General continues the dialogue with President Obama and also with Chairman Archambault to keep encouraging for a peaceful solution to this situation that is ongoing. This is not going to get solved out on, like I mentioned before, this is not going to get solved in the current condition that it's in. More assistance from the federal government is needed to make sure that safety maintains as the #1 priority through this whole situation. With that, now I'm going to introduce you to General Al Dorman of the North Dakota National Guard.
Thanks, Sheriff. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Al Dorman. I'm the Director of Emergency Services for the state of North Dakota. I'm also the Commander of the North Dakota National Guard. Yesterday, myself, Sheriff Paul Laney, Lonnie Wangen, our Commissioner of Veterans Affairs, and at the request of Mr. Wesley Clark, Jr., we also had with us a representative of the pipeline security team, had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Clark, Brenda Whitebull, who is a retired Marine from Standing Rock, and Candy Mossett from the 3 affiliated tribes. Mr. Clark is one of the organizers of the Veterans Standing with Standing Rock group who plans to protest against the pipeline this week, Sunday through Tuesday. We had a good discussion and walked away with a mutual commitment to maintaining peace, showing mutual respect for one another, and ensuring adequate space between law enforcement and protesters who peacefully exercise their First Amendment rights. During our discussions, we raised concerns about some of the statements in the operation order published and posted online by the protest leaders that stated or intimated offensive action against police line or movement onto private property. Mr. Clark assured us that there was no intent to engage law enforcement or move past the south side of the Backwater Bridge. Mr. Clark also assured us, more than once, that their intent is to bring awareness to the issue through prayer, nothing more. Further, Mr. Clark assured us that there would be no weapons and no aggression toward law enforcement from the Veterans Standing with Standing Rock group. Both law enforcement and the Veterans Standing with Standing Rock leaders understand that there is no way to control a minority in the camp looking for a confrontation. We agreed to continue dialogue to mitigate the actions of people who don't respect the spirit of the event. Mr. Clark did say that if the leaders of the Veterans Standing with Standing Rock group identified anyone getting out of line, they would remove these individuals from the protest area. Near the end of our conversation, I was able to spend a few minutes with Ms. Brenda Whitebull. We discussed a desire to reestablishing dialogue with traditional camp leaders with an eye toward maintaining peace, ensuring the personal safety of all involved, and starting the process of rebuilding our relationship with the Standing Rock people. I'll now turn the podium over to Sheriff Paul Laney, our operations chief.
Thank you, General. Sheriff Kirkmeyer. Hello, as you said, I'm Sheriff Laney, one of Sheriff Kirkmeyer's operations commanders. And as General Norman said, yesterday we had very positive conversation on the bridge. During that conversation, a question was asked of me, would we consider pulling back from the bridge? And the answer to that question is yes. We want this to de-escalate more than anybody does. So what would it take for us to do this? Well, we've discussed this, and this is what we would consider. We will pull back to an area that gives us separation between law enforcement and the protest groups. We will not permanently staff the north side of the bridge. And we will do this no later than 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Like everything, this comes with caveats. We have received very concerning intel that an element within the protest movement wants to exploit veterans with PTSD, arm them, and try to trigger their PTSD and turn them aggressive. Besides being horrible and wrong, it could be dangerous and deadly. So what do we need to do for us to pull back? The command element for these veterans, Wesley Clark Jr., Michael Wood, Ms. Brenda Whitebull, and Ms. Candy Mossett, who was also on the bridge, and those they have identified as leaders, need to intervene and assure us that they will not let this happen. They must control the violent members of their protest. Also, the protest movement must agree to 1, stay in the identified protest area, which is the main camp and the south edge of the bridge. Not on it, south of it. 2, the protest movement must agree to stay off the bridge unless a prearranged meeting with Morton County is approved. 3, the protesters cannot at any time attempt to remove any barriers or wire from the bridge. It's not their property, and it's there for safety reasons. And 4, at no time will any protester move north of the bridge by walking, riding, or flying a drone. This includes trying to flank us on any side. When they move towards us aggressively, we have no way of knowing their intent. Compliance with these 4 requests will result in the following. It will keep the separation between law enforcement and the protesters and assist in de-escalating any further confrontations. And I think we all want that. It will show good faith by the protest movement in not moving towards the law enforcement lines and forcing a confrontation. It reinforces peaceful and prayerful in the designated protest areas. Violation of this agreement will result. It will demonstrate the intent of the protest movement for direct action against law enforcement and their desire for confrontation. It will show they have chosen to violate the law, and it will result in their arrest. It will result in the arrest of anyone moving in the area north of the bridge and the water lines north on core property. And it will result in our immediately moving forward to our positions on the north side of the bridge. But if we can agree, the results will be less of a chance for a confrontation. It establishes a protest area that law enforcement will not interrupt. And it demonstrates the intent of the protest movement to truly stay peaceful and prayerful. We all want this to de-escalate and end peacefully. However, that takes a concerted effort by the protest movement to police their own groups. We truly hope this can happen. Thank you.
right, that is definitely a very big concern of ours and of law enforcement in general, is the safety of everybody involved, including the protesters, law enforcement, and the workers that are currently there. But I don't think everybody realizes that work on the construction is not happening at this point, and there is no work being done at the drill location until that easement is signed, or if it's not signed, this is where it stops. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. So with that, we will open up some questions.
If you guys are looking to reopen the bridge with the Army Corps of Engineers, I know everybody's anticipating what's going to happen on Monday. Are there any extra precautionary efforts you all will be taking?
On Monday, well, we're not going to open up the bridge until the bridge gets inspected and the violent protest activities stop occurring. But other than that, the barricades and stuff will remain in place until those things occur.
Sheriff, during the meeting, did people on the protest side admit to violent actions taken by members of their group?
I don't know if admit's the right word. I think everyone understands that there is an element within the protest camp that nobody controls. And in my discussion toward the end of our time there about re-engaging with traditional leaders, we had those conversations early on. And they were very productive conversations. I think there was mutual trust and respect between us and those traditional camp leaders. But even then, these are elders that garner a lot of respect from the Native American community, but they don't control everyone. And that camp is made up of many different folks from many different walks of life. So establishing rule of law and some level of order within that camp can be very challenging. Our request of the organizers of the Veterans Standing with Standing Rock is that they control their group and they assist us in controlling those that are looking to cause trouble. In talking with Mr. Clark, I truly believe he is committed and his leaders are committed to keeping this peaceful.
Sheriff Kirkmeyer, just a follow-up question. When you asked specifically for help from the federal government, what kind of assistance did you ask for other than the discussion of the easement? Could you be more specific on that?
Well, yes. As we go through this, there's been questions about treaty land and that type of things to be figured out. And as we go through this, I cannot, the county cannot, the state of North Dakota cannot, but it's a federal government issue to deal with treaties, and those are the people that need to get involved. Whoever, how those treaties come about and where they go, it's a federal issue, and that needs to come from them.
And a follow-up on the barricade. When you discussed where the barricade was going to be north of the bridge, can you tell us what that distance is? And also, as you know, information gets to the camp very slowly in some aspects, so not everyone will actually hear your message and not know what the rules of engagement are. So I wonder what the flexibility would be on law enforcement and getting your message out in terms of where the parameters are.
Well, you're here, and I hope that message gets out strongly. I mean, we have representatives of all area of media, and I'm telling you that social media network, whether it's the complete lies and misinformation out there, or the legitimate media outlets that get onto Facebook and get into social media, they'll see this. Believe me, everything we say and do is usually out there fairly quick, ma'am. And we're hoping that will happen, and we will engage with the people we talked to yesterday. Look what happened out of that conversation. We're standing here willing to do this. We want to show de-escalation. If you'll notice, the only time there's ever been confrontation is when they come at us. On October 27th, we did everything we could prior to that date to not have to move in and enforce the rule of law and move people off private property. We were forced to do that. We moved off private property, we moved the protesters up, and we stopped at that bridge. And we've never moved past that bridge. The only time there's confrontation is when they come after us and come at us on the bridge, or they try to come across the water lines, or they try to come over to Turtle Hill and try to come towards us. And all we've said is go back to the protest site. There will be no confrontation. How far we're going to move back, that's a tactical situation for the safety of our officers. I won't say that, but I will say it's a distance that's very respectful of what they want to do. And it'll certainly allow them to protest. It'll certainly allow them to give their opinion and their voice without us hovering right across the bridge.
And is it only temporary for tomorrow at 4 p.m. or is it going to be indefinitely?
This could be permanent if they can police themselves, if these groups looking for confrontation will de-escalate. And we all know that maybe they can't control some of these violent factions, but they certainly know who they are. And they certainly could work with the BIA. They certainly could get those names to us. And we can start working on ways to stop that threat. Nobody wants a confrontation, least of all law enforcement.
And one more question.
Yes.
Has there officially been a count in terms of how many actual emergencies there have been in the camp where, you know, some of your folks have had to risk their lives to get to people to rescue them on at the actual camps?
You know, we've heard of a number of things, and actually some pretty scary things that have happened in the camps.
Right.
If we would have went in there with our people, North Dakota law enforcement, it would have started a war. If we would have shown up at those gates and it would have been, oh, they're just here on a ruse. They're just here to come and get us. That's never been our intent, never will be our intent, nor is that going to happen. A whole lot of people are coming here expecting to see some kind of a confrontation on December 5th, and they're going to be pretty bored because it's not happening. We are not pushing people off that land. We are not pushing people off those camps. We're asking them to respect this agreement, and let's de-escalate this. Okay. As far as what's happening in the camps, when there have been emergencies, BIA has responded at our request, and the ambulance service out of Standing Rock has responded. You'd have to ask them for that information. But again, it goes back to, we don't want to escalate this, so for us to come in there, it would have started a war, and that is not what we're going to do. But I will remind you, I want you to go back a few weeks when there had been a canoe that tipped, and initial information coming out of the camps is that 2 people went under and only 1 came up. Now that turned out to be misinformation. Well, what did you see? You saw Sheriff Kirkmeyer in charge of the dive team, coordinating with people there, trying to go into that very area to try to save a life. Even in the midst of this. That's what matters to us. Life, safety, and the safety of all people on both sides. That's what we do. That's the oath we take. All that misinformation out there that we want a confrontation, we want to hurt people, that's what it is. Misinformation.
Can you be more specific about, we're new here, you said violent, there have been instances. What has happened out there, violent instances towards law enforcement?
Towards law enforcement, well, we'll start on October 27th. That day, Molotov cocktails being launched at our people, explosive devices. We know of that night on the bridge. The investigation will come on top. We know that there were explosive instruments being handled by people on that bridge that night. Whether their intent was to throw them at us or whether their intent was to blow up that truck, I don't know. But I do know they were handling explosive devices and they handled it wrong and something happened. And we'll have to leave that to the investigators that are looking at that. We're talking rocks, we're talking logs. We have incidences of where they are throwing or they're launching marbles and the nuts from the end of bullets with wrist rockets. And then people wonder why we wear a helmet. We wear a helmet because that hurts. It could seriously injure or kill. So there are a lot of those types of things. That incident that night would never have happened had nobody advanced to the north side of the bridge. It was a peaceful Sunday night. Elements within the protest movement and many within the protest movement themselves, you've seen it in the media yourself, agreed. A select number of people instigated that with us, not vice versa.
Sheriff Kirkmeyer, I have a question for you. The Dakota Access Pipeline protesters have been attempting to place a restraining order on you. Can you comment on that?
No, the restraining order was denied in the federal court.
They refiled it, though. Apparently it was denied off of a technicality, so they were still pursuing the restraining.
It's still going through the court process. There is no other information. It's in the federal court at this point.
Sheriff, if the conditions of this are met and officers move back from the bridge and protesters move back from the bridge, will Department of Transportation be allowed to come in and inspect the bridge?
If it's safe, yes.
What are the conditions of it's safe if those
That means
conditions
that
are met?
there's no one around the bridge. There's no protest activity around the bridge or the threat of it, and they can seriously set up and do their proper inspection, what needs to be done.
So will that situation, will that occur if all of these conditions are met?
It sure could.
Okay, and then what's the process from there for reopening Highway 1806?
Well, once DOT needs to answer more of the technical questions because I'm not a bridge inspector, but I know that they need the opportunity to get down there, inspect the bridge, do some core drilling, and to make sure that bridge is safe for the long haul of vehicles crossing it. And what repairs need to be done, I do not know. That will have to wait till the inspection.
If the activists don't abide by the terms of this agreement, should they expect an increased police presence going forward?
Well, I hope not. As long as if they say this is peaceful, which some definitely are. There's absolutely, I think there's a large portion of individuals down there that want to keep it this way. But there has been aggressiveness towards the law enforcement, not the other way around. And as long as that does not happen, there are no issues. This is very simple. If it's a peaceful, prayerful protest, there absolutely are no issues here at all.
Has anyone from the Sheriff's Department or other law enforcement agencies been into the camp just to take a tour or talk to anybody?
No, not in the camp.
Why is that? Any particular reason?
Because it's dangerous, and we want to make sure that it doesn't escalate when that's not the intention of it.
And what is the role of these federal mediators, these conciliators that are coming in? Can you explain a little bit more about what exactly they're going to be doing?
Well, they've been here in times before, and they've also we facilitated a meeting with Chairman Archambault, some of the other tribal leaders, along with myself, General Dorman, Colonel Gerhardt with the Highway Patrol, and we sat down and we talked about the issues. But there's certain issues that you could talk about for forever and is not going to get solved. That's why the federal government and the easement decision has to be made one way or the other, so we know which direction this is going. If the easement isn't signed, then fine. Let's go that way and let everybody know so we can get on with it. And if it is, then we have to make sure that the laws are followed. But in essence, the laws by the federal courts. So that's where we're at. But sitting across the table and at this point in arguing with law enforcement or with North Dakota about shutting down the pipeline or moving the pipeline, that is something that we and I cannot do.
And if that's the case, what's going to be different this time around with these federal mediators involved?
Well, that's what we want to make sure we get the right people. We got to get in here, get down to the bare bones of what the problem is, and act on that, not on the superficial stuff. We got to get down to what the base cause issue is.
Sheriff, do you have an updated estimate of the size of this population in the encampment?
No, I do not at this point.
Sheriff, you just mentioned the base cause issues. What are those?
Well, one is that the whole protest activity is about stopping the pipeline, which I cannot do, law enforcement can't do. The state of North Dakota, it can't do. This is something that was, all the permits and everything are there. But this is what has to be discussed, is that where we go from here and what happens in the future. Not only from this pipeline, but I think if it's done right on the protest side, this could affect pipelines in the future. And I think that is very positive, but it has to be done the correct way. Having aggression towards law enforcement and towards any situation or even National Guard individuals that are down there is not going to solve this problem. It's just not gonna.
Has law enforcement issued any fines or anything for the permanent structures being constructed on the campgrounds? I was there recently, and there was at least 3, one of which in the process of being built while I was there.
That's a Corps issue. That is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers
Has law enforcement
issue.
or the National Guard had any communication with the Corps this week? And if so, what did you discuss?
I have not. General, have you?
Just ongoing discussions about how we can make sure that there's security and safety within the camp and what we're going to do jointly going forward.
General, can the National Guard be activated by the federal government? And if yes, would they be able to act as law enforcement in the camp on Corps land?
Okay, I'd like to say I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, but I'm actually a lawyer. But my understanding would be the only way for the National Guard to be federalized would be for the president to declare insurrection, and then he could federalize the National Guard and send them in. But I'm just winging that.
And finally, could someone speak on the actual number of staff or security or agencies that are here for this weekend's veterans event or beyond this? Are we talking about just a couple of, security agencies, or are there more folks?
I could answer that, and one thing I want to do, just first and foremost, the other incident, you had asked about that, and I thought as we walked away, the general reminded me, one of the most serious incidences was October 27th, when Red Fawn Fallis, I believe her last name was, fired the rounds towards the line of officers. She's been charged federally, so that's not something we're just guessing at. There's enough evidence to charge her federally that she will answer in federal court. So we've had objects, we've had threats, we've had actual overt action to hurt us, and so we have to prepare for that. If it was the actions of the peaceful and prayerful, and that was this entire protest, as Sheriff Kirkmeyer said, we wouldn't be here. It would be a lawful protest of Americans exercising their right. We wouldn't be standing here. But like everything, the few ruin it for the many. And when you're talking about the lives and safety of citizens, law enforcement officers, and soldiers, we have to prepare for those few that want to take it to another level. I guess we're asking the protest movement for that help in helping to police this. Let's de-escalate. Let's turn it completely peaceful and prayerful, and get rid of that violent element that wants to escalate, that has their own agendas. So that further to answer your question. As far as which agencies are here, numerous agencies that have been here. Again, for security reasons, I won't announce who, how many, or what. We base our staffing based on what we think we can do to keep people safe and keep people from getting hurt. That's our goal here. I've been asked 100 times, if not more, what's going to happen on Monday, December 5th? Well, I can tell you the sun's going to come up and the sun's going to go down, and I can tell you we're not moving on that camp. Nor are we planning on doing that anytime in the near future. So if people are here looking for a showdown, the governor has issued his evacuation order. We would hope people would honor the request of the governor of North Dakota to leave that area. The Army Corps of Engineers has issued an eviction order saying, you're not welcome on this property anymore. You're not here with a permit for safety reasons, for the flooding reasons, all that. We need you to leave. I would hope people would recognize that and say, they don't want us on their property. We have to go home now. But if you're going to think you're going to see a mass of law enforcement and National Guard rolling in there, you're going to be waiting a long time, because that's just not happening.
Some activists have alleged that some of these violent agitators are people who are paid by the company, Energy Transfer Partners, or even law enforcement themselves to go in and stir up and provoke a response. I wonder if you can comment on that.
I would say that could tell you that law enforcement, absolutely, that is ridiculous. We are here to keep the peace. I can't answer the company. I have nothing to do with the company, and I certainly don't work for the company. You can ask them that. I've never seen that kind of activity. We've never had those kind of conversations. They just want to do their work as they're legally and lawfully allowed to do, and that's the conversations I've had with their representatives. Contact is very minimal. Right now, we're a barrier between those that want to stop that work and those that are working. The best way for us to keep people safe is to be that barrier in between, and that's what we're trying to do. We don't have a side here. We are protecting the rule of law in North Dakota, and we are protecting the safety of citizens of North Dakota. We're protecting the workers doing legal work, and we're protecting the protesters, really, from if they decide they're going to go into that environment and try to force a confrontation. We're trying to stop that from happening. Our whole goal here is to de-escalate this and be that safety barrier. Everything else that's out there is misinformation.
Sheriff, you talked about threats about triggering veterans' PTSD. I'm wondering if there have been any other credible threats made against law enforcement in the last week or so?
There's a lot of stuff out on social media. There's the threat that we have on that is a credible threat based on intelligence that we've received from what we believe is a credible source. We don't.
Can you list
Social
that
media
source?
is not our intelligence network. Okay. Do we see some of the things that are out there? There was recently one that was posted out there about how they're They've got all their white snowsuits and all that coming in, and then while we're away, they're gonna be home sexually assaulting our wives, that type of stuff. Stuff like that doesn't help, all right? It certainly inflames it, and certainly those people that have that kind of mentality are not helping this situation. But when we put out something like I did today, it's because we feel there's a credible source of information, and no, I won't give you who that is, because it'll be dangerous. So, but enough that we brought it out here to say, we believe this is a tactic that is actively being worked. And I would say as a former veteran, to try to do that to somebody who's already suffered enough serving this country, who's served their country honorably and now come back and has the effects of war or the horrors of war are having a PTSD effect on them, and you're gonna try to trigger that for an activist reason? I think you can see in my reaction how that makes me feel. It's sickening. And for them to try to do that, to try to force a confrontation, to proceed, look at law enforcement, they triggered this, no we didn't. And we do believe it's credible information, or I wouldn't have said it. I wouldn't have stood up here and said what I said today. This needs to de-escalate. This whole thing needs to settle down. The protest movement has made its point. It needs to be dealt with in federal court, and the courts need to speak. That's how our country works. All this about the Treaty of 1851 and all the different treaties that are out there. We are local and state government. The treaties were created and made into agreement with the federal government. The federal government who won't engage, even though we've asked numerous times, come help, bring us, it's a federal reservation and they've camped on federal land. How can you not tell me it's not a federal problem? That's been dumped into local labs. So we're asking them, yeah, we've been asking, engage, come in, work with the tribe, answer their questions. The federal government's in charge of enforcing treaties, so let's get the federal government in here and help solve this. And what have we seen? Nothing. Nothing. Some token, we'll send you a couple people on the ground to come and talk. How about you send a representative from the Obama administration to engage with the tribe and start alleviating their concerns, start discussing what's been happening, and start de-escalating these threats. That would be wonderful. It's something I think both sides here would embrace.
Since Donald Trump has spoken out in support of the pipeline, do you think that it's going to take as long as a change of presidency?
Last question.
Yeah, this will be the last question.
Well,
Since you haven't heard back from the
it's
Obama.
December, that's happening in what, about 5 weeks, so I guess we'll know in the next 5 weeks. I would love to see it happen now. I would love to see this current president, he's our president now, and his administration engage, and let's bring this to a successful conclusion. If that doesn't happen, I hope President-elect Trump will engage and will come in and help us solve this. We can't keep this going on forever. We don't want people to get hurt. And North Dakota winter is not a friendly thing. So let's get this solved. Let's end this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.